Hello, beautiful souls. Madiha B reporting love from Amman, my hometown. And today I wanted to share with you something probably many of you don't know about me, which is before my entire shift in the journey of consciousness, I was very much an academic and somebody who was very committed to her career and her education. And one of the schools that I went to was Oxford, probably the leading university in the world. And I'm somebody who really believes in the bridging of the heart and the mind. I'm not somebody who believes that living only in our feminine or only in our hearts and our bodies is something that is enough to cultivate a rich life. And so one of the things I really enjoy in life and invest in life and really want to encourage the community to also go deeper into is education. Now, this doesn't only mean institutional education. This just means the best education you can possibly get for yourself. This can mean online courses. This can mean the best university. It can mean whatever the best education you can have for yourself would mean to you. But today I wanted to make a video about how I got into Oxford, which is the world's top university, and what helped me really cultivate a successful track so that now in my career as a coach and as a change maker and as somebody who's really creating change in the Arab world, today I'm going to share with you 3 things that I feel were really central and key to my success and also to my entry into Oxford University. Now, for many of you who don't know Oxford, it's one of the oldest universities in the world. It's in the UK, about an hour or 2 from London, and it has the most marvelous, beautiful campus you can imagine. And I was lucky enough to do a part-time master's there, so I was able to travel between Jordan, where I was working, and Oxford, where I was studying creative writing. So let me tell you a bit more about how I got into Oxford, and maybe some of these tips can help you really forge maybe a vision for your education. It doesn't mean you have to go to Oxford or Columbia or wherever, but maybe start to have goals in your education and start to think of how can I connect with people at a higher level, at the highest level. This includes, people who coach you. I'm currently coaching with an amazing coach who's also my spiritual mentor right now. And all of this is aligned with this vision of a higher education. It doesn't just mean university. It just means a higher education, a higher level, the highest level, the greatest minds, the greatest creators, people who have really been playing life at the top of their game. So without further ado, the degree I had applied for at Oxford was actually the 3rd master's degree I had applied for was planning to do, because before that I had a degree in international world history from Columbia University in New York and also from the London School of Economics. So one of the things that really helped me create a CV and a presentation and an entrance that could compete and could align with people who are also applying to Oxford were the research papers and the projects and the work I had done in my earlier degrees. And this also applies before, because when I was doing my undergrad, I was also doing a lot of really amazing research projects, which brought me into Columbia, into the LSE. But Oxford being the number 1 in the world, I just wanted to share with you today what worked for me. And maybe this can be something that can support you in your own education and growth. So, doing a research project at the London School of Economics, I did independent research on a society of women geographers, which nobody had ever done before. And so one of the grants I had gotten, scholarships, allowed me to go to Washington, D.C., where this organization called the Society of Women Geographers had their archives. And this was a society from the 1920s. People like Amelia Earhart and Eleanor Roosevelt and a lot of big names at the time, very powerful, important women, were part of this society. But nobody had written about it or done research. People had done different kinds, but nobody had accessed these archives. And so I got a grant from Columbia and did about a month or 6 weeks of research in Washington, D.C., where I was opening these untouched letters. I don't think I was supposed to, so please don't tell anyone about this, but really putting my hands on these old historic documents and reading letters and reading words that nobody had read before me, because a lot of them were closed letters or reports from the 1920s with that like dusty ancient feel, and kind of putting the pieces together like a detective. And when I was young, when people would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? The answer that often came was a detective. I like to put the pieces together. And so for 2 years, I was doing this very in-depth research on the Society of Women Geographers, research that 1, I enjoyed, 2, I excelled in, and 3 was complemented by my spiritual life. Because when I was doing my research in DC, in London, in New York, I was always prioritizing my health, my wellness. I was doing hot yoga at the time. And literally my friends would make fun of me because they would all go out and I'd be like, sorry guys, I gotta go to hot yoga. And they didn't really understand why I was doing it. They thought I was doing it to look good or whatever. But really I knew that in order for my being to be at the highest level of productivity and creativity, I had to be operating at my highest. And so yoga in those days was a real priority for me. And because there was hot yoga available in London and in New York, this was truly an amazing privilege I had during that time. And so this number one hack is about doing work, research, studying things that really fascinate you before you apply to a program that's really a stretch from where you are. And so when I was studying these women geographers, I was so fascinated. I was spending more time than anyone in the library writing. I was putting amazing playlists while I was writing my research. I was putting the pieces together. I was getting to know the characters in the story I was writing. And that's the most beautiful thing about, let's say, the field I was writing, which is history, or I was writing a her story, which is a history of women. And you get to tell the story. And I got to tell the story of these women travelers from the 1920s, how they defied the norms and they were able to come together as a society, as a community, to say to the patriarchal structure that was outside of them, yes, we can. Yes, we deserve. We're not meant to be just at home. We're also travelers. We're also scientists. We're also writers. And so my fascination with this topic was something that really afforded me a high rank in my peers. And I got what was called in the British system a brilliant distinction, a grade of 80 on my research paper. I think this is given to 1 or 2 people in every cohort. And so this was a great privilege and a great starting point that made me feel like no matter what I applied to from there, it's gonna work out well. And what also many people don't know is that at the time, I had applied for a PhD at SOAS and I got in right after this degree. And I'm so glad I didn't go, because if I had gone and I hadn't accepted the job here in Jordan and I hadn't met Ihab, this whole timeline would have been different. So I'm really reflecting on the key moments where I could have done a different choice, but I chose to follow my heart. And so this brings me to the second point that really helped me get into Oxford, which is cultivating very rich relationships with my professors. I was always somebody who found the company and the conversation and the time spent with professors a huge gift, I was spending a lot of their office hours in their office, talking about things, talking about the texts we were reading, doing extra work, diving deeper into the questions that fascinated me. I remember one of the great undergrad courses I took in philosophy. I was a philosophy minor. I would always go and visit my professor and talk about the things I was doing my research on, which was like beauty and aesthetics. And that's the beautiful thing about the education I received in Minnesota, in the US, in London, in New York, and all the different universities I studied, which is I was always able to study what I loved. And that's what I love about those educational systems and why I embrace them. Even though once you start into consciousness, you start to see the shadow of the educational system. I was also lucky enough to have a global education that really allowed me to follow my passion, to follow my heart. I even did a study abroad semester in India, and I was studying national identity and the arts. And what was also so unique about this is that at the end of the project, at the end of the semester, I was able to conduct my own research, and I did it on pilgrimage. So I always had this spiritual touch with everything I did, including academia. I was asking the big questions. I was writing papers about mysticism and Qawwali and spirituality. And so I was using my mind to bridge the passion and the openings that were happening in my field on an energetic level. So this really bridging between the mind and academia and the heart is something I think I really want to embrace in our world of spirituality, rather than ignore or say, we're just people who are gonna anchor only in the heart. Because I feel thinking and reading and learning is a really big part of the expansion process. And so back to this hack number 2, cultivate really good relationships with your professors. In many of the universities I went to, professors were our friends. In London, where I studied at the London School of Economics, we could go out with our professors, we could go have a juice or something after class. We can always spend extra time where the professor becomes a bit more like a friend, an intellectual collaborator. And one of my professors at the LSE was also one of my best friends there. And so cultivating relationships with your professors, with your teachers, with people who you see as mentors, as educators, as inspirations to you is a really good way, because what this did for me is I got really good recommendations to the schools I wanted to apply to. And I would say in my first master's degrees, which was in Columbia, the The only reason I was able to compete with other people was because I had such a good recommendation from my then advisor, James Dawes. And so cultivating relationships with your teachers and professors is a really, really beautiful way to make sure that your recommendations and your application to the university meets the standard and goes even beyond, where the recommendation speaks about all your gifts and the excellence you bring and the passion you bring and the brightness of your mind and the connections you make. So do not forget, not necessarily to become friends with your professors, because not all professors welcome that. I remember there was a professor in my undergrad who I called by his first name once, and he wrote me a really long email going, "You do not call your doctor by his first name or your physician, so why would you think it's okay to call your professor?" And I was so confused, because other professors had put that as kind of the standard in this university, where you can call us by our first names. So it's true, not all professors like that. So you need to gauge and explore. But at the same time, if you just make it an intention to connect intellectually with the professors whom you feel have a passion for what they teach, have a love for the topic that they are imparting and transmitting to you, then make sure to cultivate very, very rich relations that can someday really help you in terms of a recommendation to the University of Oxford. All right, beautiful. I hope those two were useful. And for the final and last one, it's really making sure that the thing you are applying for is something you've been doing for a while. So more than the first point, which was the research I had done and I got a really good distinction on it, the third point is more about you being immersed in the thing that you want to learn more about. So for example, when I was applying to Oxford, again, the world's top university, the reason I was able to compete with other people applying for this creative writing program who were published writers and authors and editors from top magazines was because I had already been a writer. I was an English major in undergrad, so my first degree. I was a double major English and International Studies, and I minored in philosophy and creative writing, I think, and religious studies. I had 3 minors. Anyways, long story short, I was a writer. I really loved reading, I loved writing, and I had won many awards for my writing, my journalism, and so this was something that I wasn't a newbie or fresh in. I wasn't applying for a degree in sociology and I had never studied sociology, or I wasn't applying for something that just fascinated me and was so far away. Rather, I was applying for a field that I had already immersed myself in and that I had a track record of success. So if you want to study, for example, creative writing like I did, then make sure the package you are offering of yourself is well-rounded. You've been published, you've won awards, and trust me, these things are so much easier than they sound. You just have to apply. Apply to competitions, apply to journals, get the ball moving, and then the moment you are fully committed to that path that you are choosing, that's when the magic happens. Acceptance happened. And here's the thing, guys, I got rejected to a lot of colleges as an undergrad, and I remember I was crying for so many weeks when in high school rejection after rejection after rejection would come. But you know what? That's what it takes. You gotta apply, spread your wings, and then the right college, the right university will come and say, "We want you. We want you." And so when Columbia said, "We want you," when the London School of Economics said, "We want you," when Macalester said, "We want you," when Oxford University, the world's top university, said, "We want you," I was so happy I had done the work to deserve that acceptance. And that means I got a lot of rejections before that. So don't be afraid of rejections. I remember one of my English and creative writing teachers at Macalester, Marlon James, who is a Pulitzer Prize winner, a Man Booker Award winner, he's a big shot kind of guy. He told us about his manuscript, the Book of Night Women, which won the Man Booker Prize one of these years. This manuscript had gotten rejected from like 100 publishers before a publisher took it on and said, "You know what, this has potential." So I think one of the main lessons also to learn in this college application expansion process is not to be afraid of rejections. Just really follow your passion, follow your purpose. I was somebody who, while all the other Jordanians in college were studying international politics and economics, literally all the Jordanians in my college were studying that, I decided to study poetry and English and philosophy. I wanted to know more about the world, and I followed that. And I would say this foundation I have in the world of the mind, in communication, in expressing my thought, is what has allowed me to be here with you today. So I am really with such a deep level of gratitude for this background, rather than saying that's the past and I don't want anything to do with it. That was something that supported me to come here. So if you're somebody who's interested in academia, who's interested in books, who's interested in learning, and especially if you're somebody who's still in the Arab world, you haven't spread your wings, then look at universities abroad. Research what the top universities are. What do they ask of you? What do they require of you? And what are the places where you can excel so that your application stands out among the thousands and thousands and thousands of others who would like to be in your shoes? My year at Columbia, at the London School of Economics, at Oxford were some of the best years of my life. I grew so much, not just as a thinker, as a creator, as a writer, but also as a human. Because living on a college campus and being among peers of thinkers and peers of creators is a very empowering process, and I really wish it among all the women in this community. Now, these things take time. Maybe you're 19 and watching this video and going, that's my dream, and one day I'll make it happen. That's great. What I hope is that this video sows seeds of inspiration and seeds of clarity as well, to make the thing that seems so far-fetched just a little bit more clear, a little bit more tangible, so that this thing that seems impossible has now become possible. So I think that's enough for today. I send you my love. I hope that you found this video, this share useful. If you did, make sure to share it with your friends, to subscribe to my channel, to tag someone who needs to hear this today. And I think that's it for today. I'll see you again next week. I send you all my love. Mwah.